Hello.
Hey, good morning. Well, transitions and especially retirement and changes in congregations of leadership, right? I've been just so gratified the last few days by all the greetings and well wishes we've gotten from congregation members, phone calls, emails, texts, and Facebook messages. It just underscores some of what we fell in love with about Lord of Life, which is such a positive, affirming, and loving congregation. It really is,
Yeah.
and we're going to miss that.
Oh my gosh, so much. That's probably the thing I'm most, concerned about in our future is finding another church that's going to anywhere near satisfy our needs like Lord of Life does. But our policy is that we're leaving and we're not going to stay as members.
Yeah.
We've seen particularly in that experience with Christos and stuff, we saw too many times when a pastor that hung around or came back or whatever to be a member and all, it just created a lot of confusion and discord unnecessarily in the congregation. And because they were still, in the people's hearts, they were still a pastor.
Yeah.
Even though they were no longer in that called position. There is something special about being called, as a pastor to a particular congregation.
Yeah. Once a pastor, always a pastor with
I think
people.
that's right. And
I remember when we joined a church after I was no longer a pastor called St. Olaf Lutheran Church. And for years, I was just a member, and I talked how I wanted to, got involved in what I felt like. And then one Sunday, Larry, the pastor, asked me to preach for him. He was sick, and last-minute thing, so I preached that Sunday. And after that, everybody kept calling me pastor
and
at that church. I was like,
pastor, too,
darn it.
is a...
I thought I could just be a member somewhere.
It is the role. The
Yes, it
pastor
is.
the role. So
Yes.
it's not really appropriate to call somebody pastor in a congregation who isn't the actual pastor of the congregation.
Yeah, but I mean, they see it's the one who comes up to preach is a pastor and so it changed my relationship with
the congregation. Yeah, it did.
and we're just saying, once you're a pastor in a place, you're just always seen as a pastor, no matter what.
Yeah.
And that's not bad. That's good. It's good to have clear role definition.
It is.
Well,
you can't function if you don't have that because there's certain things required of the pastor that aren't of a member.
Pastors preside over many joyful and tragic and sad occasions in people's lives. They get intimately involved in their lives. There's counseling, there's support, and also just working with people as leaders and raising up leaders. And there's lots of challenges in those relationships.
One of the things that's sort of cool about being a pastor, though, is here you are invited into these most intimate moments in people's lives for no other reason and then the job that you're doing. And it's such an honor to be in that position.
And sometimes the pastor's wives brought into, or spouses.
Yeah, right, spouses.
With us, it's husband. But spouses brought into that where they assume pastor's spouse knows everything, even if they don't. So if somebody might show up at church and start talking to you about their situation, assuming you know all about it.
Yeah.
Because they feel like, there's this connection, even with you, too.
So, it's confusing.
Yeah. Well, anyway, that's a whole other thing to talk about.
But yeah.
But for us to move on, I think is really valuable and useful for Lord of Life, because for one thing, we're just too big of personalities. we just would not be.
We wouldn't be able to sit in the back pew
No,
and not have
it would be hard.
It
It would be so hard to be sticking. I'd be sticking my nose in. That
I
would be
know.
so unhealthy.
So
And
bad.
new leadership and a new era of history of a congregation needs its own development.
Yeah, and I'm sure we'd couch everything in very nice terms. But
Oh,
we'd
sure,
be
sure.
Trying to control something.
Yeah,
You know
and
we would.
even with this, former pastors who members, just as a look, people are watching for that from the former pastor.
It's interesting that I have had a rule that I've mostly followed about not going to annual meetings.
Yeah.
Part of that is sometimes they're very contentious, and I don't want to know who's, mad at my husband and stuff.
Oh, okay.
It's a lot easier to love people if you don't know that. But the other thing is I don't want to give my face, say anything. I don't want people to be able to, when an issue comes up, I don't want them to be able to know what I'm thinking, and I can't hide this.
And it is, and it
I'm
is in a
transparent.
sense, you're in a position of authority in the congregation too, by virtue of being the pastor's spouse.
I don't know
I mean,
how
there's
much.
some of that.
That's what I mean about confusion. I think
It
it
is.
varies a lot.
It's a lot less than it used to be.
Yeah.
50 years ago.
But I certainly don't want my face to cause you problems.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So that's my real.
Or cause the congregation
or cause the
problems.
congregation problems.
Yeah.
You know. So that was another. And I also figured if they need my vote that bad, then they shouldn't be talking about that
They
issue.
shouldn't be voting on
Yeah, they
it.
shouldn't be voting on it if they really need my vote.
You never want a vote to be just close to 50-50. You want it to be
No.
more like
consensus.
85 to 90%.
Yeah,
consensus, even
yeah.
if it's a legal vote, there needs to be consensus in a congregation. Otherwise, you shouldn't go forward.
No, just wait till there is consensus.
Yeah.
Anyway,
So, but I mean, that's why we're moving on, as difficult as that's going to be,
it will.
because this has been such a incredible experience here.
When the first time we came to Lord of Life for it was like kind of the
Interview?
interviewing
Yeah.
process, and I was just so struck by the sincerity of worship there, and that is.
What did you see that told you?
Well, I'm not exactly sure. It's just that you could tell that people believed what they were saying. It wasn't just a song and dance or something. People were truly worshiping, and that has been consistently the case. And I just loved that. I just loved that. The authenticity of the congregation. is just,
Yes. And authenticity, including at worship. Very real, present. Where I notice it is how people were at the altar when they came for communion.
yeah, I didn't get to see all
It was
of
a
that.
very profound moment for people
Yeah.
in that congregation. And it still is that way at Lord of Life.
Yes, it is.
Very powerful moment.
Yeah.
And I think new people who come to join come to experience that, and they fall into that experience as well.
Yeah,
That it's just that
authenticity.
powerful and intimate and direct experience of the love of God and Jesus. I don't know, it's powerful.
Another thing that I have just loved about Lord of Life is their kind of can-do attitude. It's like, well, let's give it a try, see if it works. If it doesn't, we'll try something else. But so willing to move forward, and I love that. There are 3 different worship styles because that people need all 3 of them.
Yeah.
So there.
And I like all 3 of them.
I do too. But it's just, I like how Lord of Life is. And it's going to be very hard. What I kind of think we'll end up having to do is sort of, get our worship from there and get our Bible study from there and get, have to piecemeal
Social action over there. Yeah.
spiritual life, because I cannot imagine we're going to find a congregation that is as wonderful as Lord of
It's
Life.
well put together. Yeah, it's a
Balanced
gift.
in its approach, and that response to social need.
Oh, yeah.
It's just
very instant.
Phenomenal.
We need help getting the house put back together for this woman.
Boom, there's people
40
there.
people.
Yeah, right.
Awesome.
We need money to, for the pastor's discretionary fund. Boom, it's
Yep.
there.
Yeah.
You're just an amazing congregation.
Yes. And so that'll be really hard to say goodbye to.
It will be.
But the good news is that the experience that we've had together for 10 years is ours always, and is the congregation's. And then you move on. And I recognize humbly, this is a good thing to remember, how pastors and their families may be important to the congregation, but they're not everything.
Oh, hell no.
Oh, when I left Emmanuel years ago, we'd been there 10 years. And I came back later. They invited me to come back to preach. I said, for the 100th anniversary, and I said, no, I don't want to do that. I'll do a children's sermon. But I was kind of begrudgingly doing that, and I was so important, to that place. But I didn't want. I wanted to pretend I wasn't.
Yeah.
Humble, right? So we got there, and I sat down on the steps to do this children's sermon. I looked around that place from the front. And God said to me, and I looked around, remember all the people that had been there all those years.
Generations. of people.
Generations. And I knew Sophie Samuelson. She was a Sunday school superintendent for 60 years. And she was baptized there, and it's like, see, Gary, don't think you're so important. They started without you, and they've gone on without you, and they're just fine. And that's a really good thing for everybody to remember. Just a
Well, I don't think people at Lord of Life think that. That
What?
that they won't be fine.
That I'm wonderful?
Yeah, one thing,
No, that I'm
You've
that
served
I'm that
well,
important.
but that you're not that important.
I agree. I think that's the truth, and that's healthy.
And it's very healthy.
Yeah, these
This-
Zoom meetings.
This is
they're
your, the people's
saying-
church.
and these Zoom meetings have underscored that. Just very positive attitude. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so those are how we do this. Move toward a new pastoral transition. But okay, great. Thanks. Let's move on. I think that's a healthy thing.
Very good.
All right. Well, that's enough for one day.
Enough.
So let's pray. Dear God, you give us blessings untold in our relationships between pastors and pastors' families and people, and so many rich stories of connections that have been made, and the love that we shared back and forth in your love. As we move on, we pray that you help us all bless each other on our new journeys, and that Emily and I stay out of the way, so that Lord of Life can move forward with its new leadership in a most wonderful and unimagined way, because it isn't here yet. Name of the Christ.
Amen.
Have a good one.
Bye.